Hello, hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of English Time with Kyle Miller. It's me, it's your friend Kyle here, and welcome. Thank you for tuning in, or I don't know, maybe I guess we could still say to tune in, which is a radio term, but this is a podcast as I speak. Maybe someday it will come to radio. You know, I had a nice stint. We have the term stint, which is meaning like una estancia, un tiempo, un periodo de tiempo. We could say a stint. I did a nice stint, in fact, a very long stint on Vaughn Radio with the Drive Time show. But this is my new journey, English Time, and for now, exclusively podcast only. I guess that's redundant to say exclusively and only in the same sentence. Exclusively podcast only. Podcast only, or it's exclusively in podcast form, at least for now. But let's see what happens. Anyway, on the show today, we have expressions, we have grammar, and we're going to look at the metric system. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of the metric system, when it was developed, why it was developed, and some interesting facts about the metric system. And we're also going to practice a little bit with some and any from a grammar perspective, to practice with some and any. So that's going to be kind of nice and very useful, something very useful. I want this show to be useful for your English, muy útil, para ayudarte con tu inglés, ¿vale? So anyhow, let's get things started. My name is Kyle Miller, and this is English Time with Kyle Miller. All right, we'll get things started on today's episode. Today, you know, for me, it's an interesting journey, the idea of podcasting, and today it's audio only. So it gives me the freedom. You know, I come from a radio background, so for me it's interesting to do a podcast where maybe today's show will be 35 minutes, or maybe it will be 47 minutes, or maybe it will be an hour and 10 minutes. I don't know. No lo sé. I don't know. And until the episode finishes, I just won't know. But today I have we kind of have no rules here because of the nature of this show. We can do whatever we want. I still like to say we for some reason, but here we are. And in the future, we may get this show onto a radio station, and then we'll have to adapt it to a radio format. But until then, we can do anything. But I think people do enjoy translating sentences, something I did a lot on the Drive Time show, and I'm going to do a lot here as well, as people like to warm up. So let's get into it with some sentences of translation. I'll give you a sentence in Spanish, and I want you to say it in English. Of course, out loud, okay? En voz alta. Here we go. Okay. Esta es la última lista por ahora. This is the last list for now, right? Por ahora, for now. This is the last list for now. For now. It's like saying de momento. Por ahora, we could say for now. Now, you could also say for the moment, but it's more common to say for now. De momento, for now. This is the last list for now. ¿Por qué no coges unos días libres? Why don't you take some days off? Now, we're not going to say days free. No, we're going to say days off. Why don't you take some days off? Why don't you take some days off? That might be a good idea, actually. Hay tanto trabajo que hacer. There's so much work to do. Claro. There's so much, hay tanto trabajo que hacer. There's so much work to do. So many things, but so much work. There's so much work to do. Necesitas un descanso. You need a rest. Claro. Necesitas un descanso. You need a rest. You need a rest. Tienes que organizar el trabajo en tu departamento. You need to organize the work in your department. Yeah. You need to organize the work in your department. Yeah. You need to organize the work. El trabajo, work, not the job, but the work, okay? The work in your department. So the job, both can be a noun, okay? A job is a noun, work is a noun or a verb. But when it's a noun, in the sense of trabajo, si es incontable, we say work, right? He does good work. Hace un buen trabajo, o hace buen trabajo. He does good work. He does a good job, or he does two good jobs. When it's countable, as a countable noun, we use job. As an uncountable noun, we use work, okay? Nadie sabe por qué él se fue. Nobody knows why he left. ¿Por qué él se fue? Nobody knows why he left. So to leave, to go, marcharse, to leave, right? Nobody knows why he left. No le dijo a nadie que pensaba marcharse. He didn't tell anyone he was planning to leave. He didn't tell anyone he was planning to leave. Pensaba. Now we have the expression or the term think about. To think about, y eso es diferente. Think about doing something, planning to do something. Think about, ing, plan to, infinitive. And they're very similar, but planning to, eso es un paso más, ¿vale? Eso significa que if you're planning to go to China, maybe you've bought your flight, you've bought your tickets, or you have made reservations or something. But if you're thinking about it, if you're thinking about going to China, that's a bit more general, a bit less close to reality, let's say. Okay, it's a bit more conceptual. Okay, simplemente dejó de venir a la oficina. He just stopped coming to the office. Yeah. Simplemente. He just. You could say he simply. Or he just stopped coming to the office. Yeah. Simplemente dejó de venir a la oficina. He just stopped coming to the office. Deja de hacerme tantas preguntas. Stop asking me so many questions. Hey, stop. Come on. Stop asking me so many questions. Preguntas, tantas preguntas. Stop asking me so many questions. Estoy aquí para ayudarte. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you, not for helping you, right? Teachers are for helping students. When we use the verb to be, teachers are for helping students learn. These books are for teaching you English. We have them to teach you English. I am here to teach you English. So we have that to and for difference, you know? You know, can openers, one of my favorite examples. Can openers are for opening cans. I use my can opener to open cans. Cigarette lighters are for lighting cigarettes. I use my cigarette lighter to light candles. Porque no fumo? Because I don't smoke. Okay? Okay, let's do 2 more sentences. Ya que estamos, since we're here. Okay? Este libro ha sido muy fácil. This book has been very easy. Yeah, this book has been very easy. El próximo será un poco más difícil. The next one will be a bit more difficult, or a little more difficult. The next one will be a little more difficult. The next one will be a bit more difficult. All right, I think we're all warmed up now with a bit of translation. And following, I guess, a format that I am familiar with my old drive time show, today let's have a look at an expression. We can call it our expression of the day. And we're looking at the expression today, to come clean. To come clean, limpio. But to come clean about something means to tell the truth, to stop hiding the truth. You could say it's time to come clean, to reveal the truth, okay, the reality. Okay, and it means, like to confess. We could say to confess or to admit to something, maybe that you've been hiding. Okay, and this is an old sentence, an old expression rather, used for a long time. As I looked for the origin, I was curious about the origin of this, and they think that it means that it came from meaning pure, or to be pure, or to be honest. So honesty related to purity, and the idea is that by confessing you are sort of purging yourself of guilt and becoming clean again. So yes, after keeping secrets, he decided to come clean. Or if you broke something and you don't tell anyone, and then finally you decide to come clean and admit it. Okay? So to come clean, it's a good expression, a good one to know. And the thing about these expressions, I don't recommend that you try to force them into your daily English. Don't force them, but use them tastefully when they seem appropriate. Okay, a lot of people are always so concerned about learning something new all the time and saying, I need to learn something new. I need to learn more difficult things. But I really believe in the importance of growing through mastery of essentials and really mastering the 85% that you really need all the time, rather than focusing on those rare terms, adding rare terms that are not so useful. But, adding a little bit, little by little, adding expressions, of course, can be useful, can be helpful, can be nice. So a good one today, our expression of the day, to come clean. Now, I want to talk about something. Every day we need a topic. We can't just translate sentences. We need a topic. And I was thinking today about the metric system. So I want to talk a little bit about the metric system, because I remember having a conversation and people seemed to debate, people that I was talking to were debating the origins of this. But the metric system was created in France during the late 18th century, and what the part of the period called the Enlightenment, right? The push for sort of a standardization, for accuracy, let's say, for scientific accuracy. And before the metric system, Europe had a pretty, I would say, a pretty chaotic collection of measurement systems, right? They had different units that were not only from country to country, but often even from city to city. People would use different units of measurement. So, for example, the foot, pied, the foot in England was about 30.5 or 30.48 centimeters, which is now known as the modern imperial foot. In France, they had the foot as well, the pied du roi, literally the foot of the king, and it was established as how long was the king of France's foot, right? And it was 32.48 centimeters. So it was about 2 centimeters more than the English foot. And in Germany, a foot ranged from 25 centimeters to 33 centimeters, depending on the region. So if you say, well, it's 10 feet, imagine having something that ranges from 25 to 33 centimeters, so 8 centimeters of difference multiplied by 10, 80 centimeters of difference over a 10-foot span. So very, very unreliable, let's say. Now, we also had the pound, right? In France, even in France, the pound, the livre, or the pound in Paris was known to be about 489 grams. But in Leon, it was between 490 and 500. And Marseille, much less, closer to 400 grams. And in England, there were loads of different, around Europe, loads of different distances that were defined as a mile. In England, a mile was 1.6 meters. 1,600 meters. And in Sweden, it was over 10 kilometers. And over 10 kilometers, the mille, they called it. And in Italy, between 1.4 to over 2 kilometers. So it's kind of crazy how this varied even within a country. So they needed some standardization, right? So there was this inconsistency. So imagine trying to design things or order, we need pieces, we need wood at this length to build something, or metal, or, materials, and just not having a consistent system for measurement. It was ridiculous. So this inconsistency made trade, engineering, and scientific work very, very complicated and full of errors. So finally, in 1790, it was the French National Assembly was put together, and they put together this task, or they were tasked with this, the development of a new system based on universal and also natural standards with a simple decimal structure, right? Sistema de decimales, mucho mejor, claro. That would be easy to understand and to use. So the first, unit of measurement was the meter. Okay, originally defined as 10 millionths of the distance from the North Pole to, 1/10,000,000th of the distance from the North Pole to the equator, along the meridian conveniently enough, passing through Paris. So this gave the system kind of a natural, universal standard rather than one based on local customs, like a king's foot or something like that, And so surveyors measured the meridian of the Earth carefully to establish the standard. So the meter became the foundation for measurement of length. And then multiples of 10 were used to create other convenient units, of course, like the kilometer, centimeter, millimeter. Now, alongside the meter, the metric system introduced the liter, which is defined as a unit of volume, of course, defined as the volume of 1 kilogram of water at its maximum density. And then, of course, the gram, which was the mass of 1 cubic centimeter of water. So this made mass, volume, and length interrelated. So it was a revolutionary idea, mixing these units of measurements, relating them, and it added logic to things. And it added logic and the ability to calculate to science like never before. Now, they also introduced other units of measurement other than length, mass, and volume. Degrees Celsius were later incorporated to measure the temperature in a decimal-friendly way, where 0 degrees Celsius is water's freezing point and 100 is the boiling point. Very convenient, things that we see as very logical now. And then we have other units such as the Newton for force, or the joule for energy, developed to extend this metric system into other scientific fields. And from there, we developed these prefixes: kilo, centi, milli, right? Kilogram, kilometer, right? Centiliter, centimeter, right? Millimeter, milliliter. And the metric system, they realized, hey, this is handy. This is good. The metric system began in France, and then it spread quickly into other European countries in the 19th century. Belgium, Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands were also among early adopters. They recognized the efficiency and the simplicity of a standardized system. And over time, the metric system became the preferred choice for science, for engineering, for medicine, and for international trade. Then by the 20th century, most countries officially adopted metric units, but some, like the United States, kept traditional units. So the United States still uses their traditional units. And as far as I know, there are only 2 other countries that don't use the metric system, other than the United States: Liberia and Myanmar. Now, Liberia, basically, they had very close economic ties to the United States, and they wanted to sort of show that respect. And so they've maintained just like the U.S., the imperial measurements. But it's kind of funny, for a lot of years, road signs in Liberia were in miles, but fuel was sold in liters. So drivers sometimes had to sort of mix these two. They'd say, well, my car would get 30 miles per gallon, but the gas pump would sell liters. Myanmar also had a traditional Burmese measurement system. It wasn't to copy the U.S., but they had their own system. The government only started using metric units in 2013, so they do use it now. But if you'd buy, for example, fruit at a market in Myanmar, a vendor would sell you a unit called a vis, which is like a little over 1.5 kilograms. So tourists could hear like, give me a vis of mangoes, let's say, or a vis of oranges in the market, right? But even though the United States technically allows metric units, and it does use them in science, in medicine, and in the military, everyday life, people will still use miles, pounds, and Fahrenheit. But even in Canada, I will say this, people like my father, for example, will still refer to things he'll still refer to temperature in Fahrenheit, which is kind of old-fashioned. But even some older people in Canada will still use that, or they'll think in miles. Although Canada has, for a long, long time now, officially used the metric system. So there you have it. Now, I thought this would be a good chance to take a look at, I love the interrogative challenge and practicing with this, forming questions as we learn a little bit more about the metric system. Let's get into it through today's interrogative challenge. All right, interrogative challenge. You know how this works. I'm going to give you the answer to the question. You can ask me the question that I have already answered. Okay, number 1. The metric system was first developed in France. Where was the metric system first developed? Where was the metric system first developed? Okay. The metric system is based on a decimal structure. What kind of structure is the metric system based on? What kind of structure is the metric system based on? The meter is the basic unit of length in the metric system. What is the basic unit of length in the metric system? The meter. The meter was originally defined as 1/10,000,000th of the distance from the North Pole to the equator. What was the meter originally defined as? What was the meter originally defined as? The liter is the metric unit of volume. What is the metric unit of volume? Well, the liter. The gram is the metric unit of mass. What is the metric unit of mass? It's the gram. The meter is now defined using the speed of light. What is the meter now defined using? What is the meter now defined using? 1 liter of water is equivalent to 1 cubic decimeter. What is 1 liter of water equivalent to? What is 1 unit of water equivalent to? The prefix kilo means 1,000 units. What does the prefix kilo mean? And finally, the metric system was first officially adopted in 1795. When was the metric system first officially adopted? When was the metric system first officially adopted? Okay, we've learned a little bit about the metric system today. And I think we're going to finish there for today. A quick one today, a quick episode. But I'll be back soon with another one. Thank you for listening, everybody. This has been English Time with Kyle Miller. I encourage you to subscribe, and we'll have more episodes and more interesting news coming soon. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.